Hello and welcome to the Wednesday edition of Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Kimberley Hoeppner and today is October 3rd, 2018. Remember, when we're not here, you can always check our forecast by dialing the 800 number, 1-800-472-0391, or you can find us online by going to the website weather.gov/Alaska and just click on the locations of your choice. And feel free to always email with further questions or some comments to david.snider@noaa.gov. That is our TV lead. Now we're going to be on to the hot topics of the day or the cold topics, depending on where you're at. Now, the low pressure system is currently located over the Bering, and this is a mature system. Around this system, we're pulling some moisture all the way up through the northern Bering waters. You can tell it's a mature system by the dry air that's made all around the low pressure system, which we call occluded. Now, if you've been following this weather system for the last several days, you know that we were expecting some fairly powerful winds with that. Well, when this front pushed through earlier today, it brought some gusts, hurricane force gusts, across the AKwx locations. Now for this afternoon, we're seeing this frontal progression over to the Alaska Peninsula. Generally rainy conditions around the frontal band, which is now stretching from the western areas of the Gulf of Alaska back towards the northern areas of the Bering. However, just to the east and north of the system, we do have a ridge that's settled in. Primarily the dominant ridges to the north, you can see a little bit of that circulation east to northeasterly flow around the system with southerly flow up along the northwest coast. Now I'll put that into motion one more time so you can note that circulation there. And also you can see the skies are fairly clear up in that region, and it's been clear. This is quite surprising for October, very unusual not to have storm systems pulling through the area. Also for the southeast, continued drier conditions with weak ridging out to the east and to the south in those locations. Now let's take a look at the surface maps. This is where we're going to show you that low pressure system out towards the Pribilof Islands. That was coming in this afternoon at 956 millibars. We had rain, heavy rain showers across Bristol Bay, stretched towards the Kuskokwim Delta, lighter showers along the backside and south side of the system. However, the winds are still gusting fairly strong out of the west this afternoon, between 30 to 50 miles per hour. Now along the frontal boundary, it's more of a southeasterly flow up into the Aleutian Range, and also the Alaska ranges are seeing some fairly strong gusts between 30 to 50 miles per hour. Not unusual along a front that was as well organized as this, but we're also seeing some winds out of the east to the north along the eastern Beaufort Seacoast. See this pressure gradient? We're seeing some very strong easterly flow just along that northern coast, and that's gusting between 30 to 50 miles per hour as well. High pressure to the south, though, is keeping conditions benign across the southeast, primarily clearing skies with the ridge in control across the Yukon. Now, across the south central locations of the state, we did see the prefrontal wave come through, so that has brought some showers up to the western Alaska range and across the Susitna valleys there across the Kenai. Fairly wet for you today, and like I said, all across the southwest, that rain is really making a surge this afternoon. As we head through the overnight hours, expect that front to continue to pull a little bit further to the east. Some showers are going to be creeping into the northern panhandle locations with some very heavy showers across the northern Gulf waters expected to develop. Also, this pressure gradient is going to be tightening up along the northern waters, and this is going to bring some significant winds through your Thursday as that front remains across the northern Gulf. Kind of have a secondary low pressure system developing near Kodiak Island, so that's what's helping keeping the gradient quite strong in this location. Now across the southwest, with the front just kind of spinning out in the eastern Gulf waters, we're going to see continued rain activity to develop. So quite a bit of rain, between a quarter to a half an inch more, can be expected for the overnight hours as the front slowly pushes a little bit further north and east. Now let's take a look at that low pressure center. It is beginning to fill during the overnight hours. 964 millibar low approaching Nunivak Island along the southwest coast. That gradient staying very tight across the Aleutians and also the Alaska Peninsula. We should see a change of wind direction southeasterly along the peninsula, becoming more westerly as this low pulls a little bit further to the coast. Look for the ongoing shower activity, heavy at times, especially along the low core centered near Nunavak Island. To the north, though, take a look. We're seeing some clear conditions continuing during the overnight hours. Daytime temperatures maxed out in the lower 30s, so still going to be cold and breezy across that eastern Beaufort seacoast, and over towards Dead Horse, we're going to see some chilly temperatures with those winds. Now across the northwest coast, just slightly warmer. We'll get to temperatures for tomorrow in just a moment. Now let's take a look at the southeast as we head into the daytime tomorrow. Here's those heavy showers creeping towards the southeast. So the eastern Gulf waters will see an uptick in rain shower development in their direction, and also the inner channels, the Juneau locations, will have a higher chance of seeing rain showers develop on Thursday. But we'll also need to focus on Thursday for thunderstorms across the northeastern Gulf, and also for Thursday looking for a possible thunderstorm development around the low pressure system in the eastern Bering. Now the front will be continuing to fill with showers along the backside of the system, and clear conditions staying to the northeast of the front. Gusty conditions will persist across the northern coast through your Thursday. However, as we head into your Friday, look for that low pressure to take a little jog back towards the west as it fills. That will allow those winds to start to taper off across most of the state, and also for the Gulf locations. The southeast or the southerly flow across the Alaska Peninsula might be slightly gusty. And then we won't see any gusts really across the northern Gulf on Friday. However, those showers are going to continue. Upper level waves are going to be moving around, continuing to initiate, with that low pressure being the dominant force, especially during the morning hours. Now let's take a look at your temperatures for your Thursday morning. We're looking at a uniform temperature across the Gulf waters in the upper 30s to mid 40s across the Gulf locations. A quick change between the 40s and the freezing temperature line pretty much along the central interior and to the northwest. Temperatures are only going to be dropping a few degrees into the mid to lower 20s. Arctic Valley will be a little bit cooler up there in the teens. Now across the southwest coast, temperatures uniform in the low to mid 40s, and all across the Bering. Now as we head into your afternoon hours, a very similar pattern to today, with temperatures reaching into the 50s again across the northwest coast and south. And then for the northeastern areas of the state, those are the temperatures that are going to be the coldest, in the 30s, with a little bit warmer trends towards the central. You'll notice the 50s, and towards the Gulf Coast locations. 50s for the southeastern locations. Again, your Thursday seeing mostly sunny skies with clouds moving in. Friday morning staying steady in the lower 40s, maybe a few 30s along the northern panhandle. Freezing line across the central interior of the state, back towards the northwest once again. The northern northeastern corridor, the coldest into the 20s and teens for the Arctic Valley locations. The southwest once again into the lower 40s. Now as we head into your Friday afternoon, very similar temperatures once again, so persistent pattern with temperatures climbing into the 50s across much of the southern interior of the state and out through the Aleutians, with the northeastern territories staying in the mid 30s. For the southeast, temperatures will climb once again in the lower 50s. Warm temperatures will primarily be across the central areas and south. As we head into your overnight Friday, with slightly cooler temperatures possibly for the southeast as they get those rain bands moving in, and similar conditions are really going to be persisting into the weekend, with ridging staying to the east and low pressure to the west. Now in just a second, we'll be back with your aviation forecast.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Tomorrow's weather is going to be challenging across the southern tier of the state, as there's going to be widespread MVFR conditions and also IFR. Looking at the southern tier of the state, we have IFR conditions from Valdez across the eastern areas of the peninsula there, and also IFR conditions across parts of the western and central Alaska ranges out towards the western coast. Widespread MVFR conditions otherwise across the area waters and the southern mainland, with possible thunderstorms out there along the eastern waters of the Bering. And we'll also see possible IFR to MVFR conditions along the eastern Brooks Range during the morning hours, as well as the areas along the northern channels up towards the Skagway location, back towards the northern panhandle. We'll see MVFR conditions as well. Now let's take a look at the afternoon hours. There are possible thunderstorms for the eastern waters of the Gulf, and we'll hang on to IFR conditions across the southern areas of the state. However, there will be some improvements across the southeast there and also across the southwest. However, widespread MVFR conditions continue once again, also as well as the thunderstorms across the eastern waters of the Bering. Now let's take a look at your Friday forecast. We'll see IFR conditions again widespread and also creeping a little bit further across the northern panhandle, as well as the MVFR conditions coming in to the southern channels as we head into the western areas of the state. Very similar conditions to Thursday morning, with widespread MVFR conditions hanging on across much of the Bering waters. And watch out for isolated thunderstorms. We'll update the forecast daily for you. So there is the possibility still hanging in there on the eastern waters and possibly for the eastern Bering. We'll take another look at that tomorrow. So let's look at heading into the afternoon on Friday. IFR to MVFR across much of the southern tier of the state once again. MVFR conditions spreading further into the southeastern locations, with MVFR conditions along the western waters. Now looking to the north, mainly VFR conditions for the next few days. Let's take a look at your passes in more depth, however. We're going to take first a look at the Anativik Pass, and that's going to be VFR, as well as Adigan Pass. We'll see Lake Clark and Merrill be mostly IFR during the day tomorrow, maybe some patchy MVFR at times, and Rainy will stay in that IFR category as well. Looking at the next, we'll see Windy go from MVFR to IFR conditions, and Isabel will stay in the VFR, and also Mentasta will be VFR for your Thursday. For Tanita, however, we'll see MVFR conditions going down to IFR late day, and then we'll see Portage stay IFR throughout the day. Thursday for Chilkoot and White Pass, IFR improving slightly to MVFR for the late portion of the day. And freezing levels tomorrow, a little bit difficult map to read this time of the year, but we do have the surface freezing level draped from the northwest to the panhandle locations of the state, and we're looking at a climb from 2,000 to 6,000 feet across the central interior areas of the state, so a little bit of a warm nose continuing across the interior, with 6,000 feet also noted across the Gulf waters. And then we're going down to 4,000 feet as you head across towards the western areas of the Bering, cold air mass coming in on the backside there. So basically icing is going to be widespread across the Bering. Low pressure system is causing these conditions, as well as much of the areas across the Gulf between 5,000 to 10,000 feet, depending where your location is. Now looking at your jet stream, very strong jet on the backside of this low pressure system at 150 knots. That's impressive, with a 60 knot flow across the Gulf waters. And then we have another jet to the north between 60 to 70 knots out of the east direction. Now looking at the low pressure system at 9,000 feet, tomorrow is going to be a very impressive storm system that's going to be coming more stationary. So we'll see 35 to 45 knots ahead of this low pressure system, with a westerly flow on the backside between 20 to 35 knots. Out there to the southeast, looking at more of an onshore flow there between 10 to 20 knots, and the strongest winds across the Gulf waters at 9,000 between 35 knots. And then a little bit more out of the east direction as you head to the north between 25 to 35 knots. This is a stacked system, and we'll see some very strong winds across the northern areas of the Gulf. A little bit of a coastal jet there developing 30 to 60 knots. So be on the lookout if you're in the northern waters or just inland. We'll have some turbulent concerns there. More of a southerly flow through the state between 20 to 35 knots. And now out towards the west, that strong flow, 35 to 50 knots around the low pressure system, with turbulence all across the state tomorrow.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, and joining us once again is Eric Stevens, our good friend from GINA, the Geographic Information Network of Alaska, based up at UAF. And thanks for joining us, Eric. Really appreciate it.
Oh, happy to be here, Dave.
And we love to hear about all the fascinating developments, new and old, and how we're using the tools here, especially around Alaska. And I've got to think that, satellite meteorology right now is a fascinating time to be involved in. If we go back to the first satellite, Tyros, back in 1960, I think is when we got some of those first pictures. Weather and meteorology probably changed that day for a whole lot of people, and it's still changing today, right?
Oh, you know it. Satellite imagery is so important, and it's getting better all the time. Yeah. Of course, never perfect, but especially for us in Alaska, where there are other data sets like radars and weather balloons are so thinly spread. Right. The satellite is the great equalizer because the satellite sees everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
We've got one particular issue in volcanic ash detection.
That's a big deal here. Yeah.
You know it. If you fly an airplane into volcanic ash, your jet engine might just fail. And an airplane without engines is in a world of hurt. Sure. So if there's a volcano that goes off, satellite imagery is the way to track that plume of ash and to tell pilots this is where you need to not be to avoid this ash plume. And there's a phrase out there, what's the difference? What's the difference?
Okay.
Well, it turns out, what we're going to discuss today, that the difference is everything. There's a technique called channel differencing. Okay. That if you take one piece of the spectrum of what the satellite detects and a slightly different wavelength of that spectrum, even though those two images might look similar, magical things happen when you subtract one from the other. And they reveal information that was already there, but it was hard to find until you did that subtraction.
This sounds like Nicolas Cage in National Treasure when he's got those fancy glasses and he's flipping one up and back and forth. I mean, is this what we're talking about?
Well, let's go more highbrow and talk Michelangelo.
Oh,
so apparently Michelangelo made some amazing sculpture and someone said, Michael, that's amazing. How did you do it? And Michelangelo's reply allegedly was, well, in that rock, the statue was already in there.
Right.
I just scraped away the unnecessary bits. In satellite meteorology, sometimes there are meteorological features that are in the data, but you can't see it until you combine or difference some of the channels. Okay. And we've got a case, good old Pavlov volcano goes off now and then. Sure. And you can observe directly a picture of the volcano. Just take it with your iPhone. You can see a volcano going off. Yep. Right. But if you want to get the broad view, we need satellite to do that. Now, there are a couple of wavelengths that we can look at. So what's a wavelength? That's the amount of space between a peak and a valley and another peak in a certain part of the electromagnetic spectrum. We're going to look at 12 micron wavelength and 10.8 micron wavelength.
What is a micron?
So what's a micron? Yeah, we're getting into the geek department now. A micron is a unit of length, and it is quite tiny. We're looking at what's called long wave wavelengths. Okay. But it takes 25,000 of these microns to make an inch. A human blood cell is about 5 microns across. So when we're talking about 12 micron imagery as allegedly long wave, well, that's relative.
Pretty short for light.
Yeah, it's other part of the, it's just an expression for the spectrum there. Okay. So we can look at a 12 micron image, say a satellite image. At 12 microns, we're seeing a heat signature here, really, and the way this color enhancement works is the yellow and the red stuff is high cold clouds down here over the Gulf of Alaska into South Central. And if you were asked, where do you find the volcanic ash plume in this image?
Hey, where do you find the volcanic plume in this image?
It's hard to do. I'm not sure I could find it. If you were to look at this image and just say, show me what jumps out at you here, I'd say, well, nothing really. Well, let's look. So 12 micron doesn't help us. Let's look at 10.8 microns. All right. All right, look at that. It's practically the same image. So where's this volcanic ash? Can't find it at 12 microns, can't really see it at 10.8, but when we subtract one channel from the other, magically, the plume appears. The color enhancement here highlights the ash in blue. Wow. The information was already there, but we couldn't find it until we subtracted one channel from another. Very interesting. It's almost magical. Similarly, let's say you're looking for fog up on the North Slope. It's kind of a foggy neighborhood. Sure. In 11 micron and 3.9 micron, we've got a 3.9 micron image here. it's a big fuzzy blur over Barrow. We can't see where the fog is. But the information is lurking in there waiting for us to reveal it. All we have to do is find that difference between the 11 micron and the 3.9, and then this image becomes this image, and the fog bank jumps right out, and you can see it up there at Barrow. Now, you got to choose the right tool for the job.
Sure.
Like they say, you open your toolbox, all kinds of stuff in there. What do we need for this particular task? If you want to find volcanic ash, we look at 12 and 10.8 micron, find that difference. If you want to find fog, we'll look at 11 and 3.9 micron, find that difference. It's great, different tools for different jobs. Of course, there's always caveats and gotchas, like this fog procedure, it only works at night, because when the sun comes up, it gets in the way. So every product has its strengths and limitations, and in meteorology, the challenge is using the right tool for the right job, and these are some of those tools.
And discovery is still happening, even with meteorology. The weather's been around for a long time, but the tools that are being developed to understand the meteorology is fascinating and still very new science.
It's such a young science. We've come so far. And I'm getting old enough now that I can literally say that, you know, when I was a boy, we didn't have this kind of thing. And there's new things happening all the time. New satellites will be launched in coming years that will have better instruments than ever before. It's an exciting time, and this is so helpful for Alaska because satellites help fill in the gaps between other ways of observing the weather. Satellites, the great equalizer for Alaska.
Yeah, and help so many people stay safe in so many ways every day up here in the last frontier.
Yeah, that's what it's all about, protecting lives and property.
Well, thank you so much for joining us again, Eric. We love to hear about this fascinating information, and boy, it just makes me want to go watch satellite pictures all day. So hopefully we're inspiring more people to do the same thing, and just be curious. It's a wonderful thing. Thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts, and we'll see you next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Hello, and now we're back with your marine forecast. Let's take a look first at the sea ice edge. Primarily, we have the sea ice edge off to the northern Beaufort Sea coast, but we do see a little bit of ice formation where it's been very cold along the coast. And then what we're going to primarily see in the next few days is this ice edge with the winds as strong as they are from the east probably is going to pull some of the pieces towards the west direction, and the ice just to the north of the coastal locations, we're going to see that get pushed a little bit further to the north because we have a strong southerly flow coming up from the north coast. Now let's take a look at your marines for the southeast. Skipping on over to the southeast, I'm going to move out of your way just a moment. Here we're going to focus on Thursday, small craft looking for the outer waters, picking up to a small craft advisory up there at 25 knots. Seas will be between 7 to 9 feet, primarily a southerly flow across the area. Inner channels between 10 to 15 feet. Seas across the inner channels will be between 2 to 3 feet. Let's look at your Friday. We're going to see a little bit lighter wind speeds on this day. South to southeasterly flow prevailing with the low pressure system just off to the west direction, and we're going to see seas on this day between 2 to 3 feet again for the inner channels and between 8 to 11 feet across the outer waters. Now let's take a look across south central locations. For the coastal locations along the Gulf, we're going to see winds increasing very rapidly tomorrow morning, so a southeasterly flow at 35 knots. Gale force winds and small craft for much of the area on Thursday. We're also going to see higher seas between 10 to 12 feet across the Gulf waters to the north and west, and Prince William Sound will be up to 9 feet there. And we're going to see a little bit more of a southerly flow across the Gulf, southeasterly to easterly flow across Prince William Sound, and a northerly flow across the inlet. So change of wind directions around the Kenai Peninsula there. As we head into your Friday, a better day across the marine areas, all under small craft. And then we'll see seas between 2 to 7 feet across the Gulf waters and around 2 feet for the Prince William Sound and most of the Cook Inlet, 3 feet just to the southern tip of the Kenai there around the Barren Islands. And then we'll see on Thursday the stronger winds across the Alaska Peninsula locations and Kodiak Island. We're going to see small craft winds for the most part, and then the seas are going to be high on this day, where the strongest winds are between 18 to 21 feet, primarily a southwesterly direction for your Thursday. As we head into your Friday, look for winds to still be gusty, mainly around the Alaska Peninsula out of the south direction, and then we'll see seas on this day lower between 7 to 10 feet. For your Aleutian chain, look for gale force winds for the eastern Aleutians, and we're going to see small craft across the central and the western locations there. For the Atka station, the marine buoy out there did record up to 30, I believe it was 34 feet this afternoon when that occurred, for quite a few hours actually. So those seas are going to be coming down for your Thursday between 12 to 25 feet, lowest seas out there towards the west. On your Friday, expect wind speeds to improve just a little bit, between 20 to 25 knots. So small craft for your Friday, seas between 8 to 12 feet. Now let's take a look at your west coast. Here's Thursday for you. Change of wind direction around the low pressure system. Gale force winds for your Thursday, primarily southwesterly, south of the low up towards the northern waters. Look for east to northeasterly flow. And then on your Friday forecast, seas will be going down from 13 feet down to a range between 5 to 10 feet. Now, we'll see small crafts, however, persist on Friday. That low pressure stays in the area. Across the northwest and north coast, we're going to see easterly flow, gales for the north coast with small crafts towards the Kotzebue Sound, and then the Bering Strait will be around 35 knots, so gale warning for you. And then seas on this day are going to be between 8 to 12 feet. Heading into your Friday, similar conditions, however, small craft across the area, and seas are going to be between 8 to 11 feet. Now let's do a recap of the forecast. The front across the southwest, south central locations is going to bring some southeasterly gusts across the southern portions of the state, very gusty winds across the Gulf. Rain is going to be spreading towards the east as we head into your Thursday forecast. Expect the southeast to have better chances on Friday. However, that low pressure system is going to be weakening as we head towards the weekend, with drier conditions across the northern state.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.